Tohoe Nakudo is an ordinary boy who has run away from home, furious with his family, and has thus decided to board a large ship. However, the ship is subjected to a great storm. During the storm, Akudo falls overboard, pushed by the strong winds, and despite shouting for help, the men in charge of the ship conclude that with such a storm and violent water movements, they wouldn't be able to see anyone from the ship. Consequently, they throw a life buoy as a last resort, hoping it will be enough for the boy to survive, but they don't make more effort than that. Akudo manages to grab the life buoy and tries to swim towards the ship, but despite his great efforts, the waters push them back, and then a big wave manages to sink him to the bottom of the sea. Akudo believes his time has come and regrets having run away from home. However, the next day, he wakes up when a girl on her daily fishing journey uses her fishing rod to pull him out of the water. The girl's name is Suzu, and she does everything possible to save the boy's life, including mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Finally, without seeing results, she takes Akudo to the island's old woman to try to heal him. While she tries to cure him, Suzu realizes that Akudo is different from all of them, and the old woman explains that he is a boy, so I assume it must be an island only for girls. Upon hearing this, all the girls in the place gather around him curiously, but the old woman immediately dismisses them. Then they mention that although all the girls on the island are Japanese, nobody really knows where the island is located. Then the old woman tells him that both she and Suzu also shipwrecked 130 years ago and ended up on that island, which fortunately served to start a new society. Akudo decides to stay at Suzu's house, but he can't help thinking that he has to find a way to find a plane or something to return home. Along the way, a girl named Ayin intervenes between them and tries to convince Akudo not to sleep at Suzu's house. After her attempts fail miserably, Ayin decides to throw a tranquilizer dart to put Suzu to sleep and take Akudo away, but she misses the shot and puts Akudo to sleep instead. After being pursued by almost all the girls on the island extremely violently, and upon realizing that it is an island only for women and understanding that it will always happen, Akudo decides to take a boat and leave. Nobody stops him, which surprises him, and despite being grateful for being saved, he embarks on his journey. However, a few meters away, he is engulfed in a great whirlwind and returned to the island. Then the old woman tells him that the whole island is surrounded by whirlwinds and that it is impossible to escape from there. Upon hearing the word impossible, Akudo has a memory of his father, in which the father is totally cruel to him and constantly tells him to give up after hitting him hard. Driven by the anger of that memory, Akudo tries again and again but fails every time. When he finally seems to understand the patterns, he decides to make another attempt but is continuously blocked by a whale, and in a blow from the whale, he falls to the bottom of the sea. Suzu manages to save him and explains that he was heading towards a whirlwind full of dangerous things that would have killed anyone, and the whale was only trying to save his life. Seeing that he has no other option, Akudo accepts his new destiny of living on that island. Episode 2. Suzu tells Akudo that the reason there are no men on the island is that every year the men of the place carried out a fishing event in which basically all the men went out to sea to fish. One day, 12 years ago, that event coincided with the Great Wave, which only occurs every 100 years, and it took the lives of everyone. Since then, only the women have remained on the island. Akudo is surprised by the story but is hopeful to know that if that wave occurs again, it will be possible to escape from the island, although Suzu reminds him that it only happens every 100 years, and Akudo's hopes drop again, although they are not zero. That night, Akudo sleeps at Suzu's house, although he is shocked to know that he must sleep beside her since, well, they don't really know how to behave around men. In a moment of carelessness by Suzu, Ayin tries to take him away, but Suzu prevents it. However, slowly all the girls fall to her house in search of Akudo with an almost zombie-like attitude driven by desire. Seeing this, the old woman decides that the next day, to solve the problem, they will carry out the competition to catch the boyfriend. Akudo does not agree with this because he does not want to marry anyone. The old woman tells him that the fact that a man has arrived on that island is a matter of destiny and they need him to marry someone. When she gives him the option to marry many at the same time and thus increase the population, Akudo decides to be part of that event because he does not want to be with all of them together. All the girls pursue him violently, but one by one, Suzu knocks them down and protects him from the traps along the way, but they always return in groups to continue the battle. Fleeing from them, Akudo falls into a great waterfall and Suzu jumps to save him, but before that happens, a girl on a bird arrives at him and the bird takes him in the air, although it ends up slipping and falling from the bird's claws. When he is about to hit the ground and thinks he has reached his end, the little piglet that always accompanies Suzu and that day is with him inflates in such a way that it manages to prevent a great blow with the fall, saving his life. The big problem is that the fall occurs in the dangerous East Forest, which is full of carnivorous plants and giant and ominous animals. Suzu, who has seen this, runs to where they are and arrives just in time to save him from the attack of a large panda bear. However, However, when she extends her hand to help him, Akuto decides not to take it because it means he must marry her. Then a blow from the bear throws him into the air again, and once again all the girls know his location and follow him. Finally, the winner is Suzu, but she rejects the offer because she says she doesn't want him and that marriage should be between people who love each other. Akuto thanks her for this attitude. Episode 3. The next day, Akuto feels somewhat uncomfortable because everything he says Suzu interprets as something romantic, although both have agreed not to marry. While organizing his backpack, Suzu approaches and asks about the cell phone because she had never seen one, and although Akuto tries to explain what it's for, Suzu doesn't fully understand. Akuto learns that since they shipwrecked on that island so long ago, they don't have taps, electricity, grocery stores, and they don't even know what those things are, so everything they do is manual and old-fashioned. So he decides to help Suzu for everything she has done for him, and together they go to fetch water from the well, where Akuto realizes that he is weaker than all the girls there, especially Rin, who is the strongest on the island. Rin's little sister thanks him because since his arrival, all the girls who chased Rin in love have left her alone, but she also threatens him, saying that if he does anything to her sister, he will have to deal with her. After a hard morning of manual labor, Akuto is tired, then he learns that this is only the work at home, now they must go to the real job. So they head to the plantations where Akuto learns that Suzu's job is to help anyone who needs help. Thus, the first task is to help some girls unearth sweet potatoes, and Akuto decides to help them, only to realize that the fruits and vegetables on that island are incredibly giant. A carrot is the size of a teenager's body. Later, while shearing sheep, he sees that the animals are small, and although they may seem cute, they are wild, something he learns after being attacked by hundreds of angry sheep because he harmed one while shearing it. On the way, they meet Chikage and the bird girl, and everyone decides to go together to collect giant mushrooms, but Akuto cannot differentiate real mushrooms from fake ones and is repeatedly attacked by carnivorous fake mushrooms. During this whole time, Chikage, who is interested in Akuto not because she wants to marry him but because she wants to investigate him, takes many notes about this new specimen that has fallen on the island. After a whole day of trying to find the true mushrooms and always falling before the carnivores that attack him, Akuto has destroyed all the fake mushrooms. Although the girls try to support him by saying that in a way it's a good thing, Akuto feels totally useless because he is weaker than all the girls on the island and he can't even differentiate the mushrooms. At that moment, Rin appears trying to flirt with him, and upon seeing them, the bird girl throws giant worms at Rin, which she detests. Akuto decides to stand in front of Rin and catch one after another of the worms so that Rin doesn't feel bad, as he is a boy and he likes worms. This situation makes him feel better about himself because at least he has managed to help someone on that island. At the end of the day, Akuto apologizes to Suzu for not being able to repay everything she gives him, and she confesses that she has already repaid him because she is the only one who has no family on that island, and at the end of each day, she envies how everyone else returns home with their families while she remains alone. However, since Akuto stays with her, returning home and talking and eating together makes her happy and makes her feel like they are family. Episode 4. On a typical workday, Akuto and Suzu head to the Sea Dragon Temple to deliver some vegetables to Ayane's sister, Maki. Maki mentions that her mother has been cooking Suzu's favorite meal, which excites Suzu. Maki then offers them 20 servings of that meal if they help her find Ayane, who has been missing for hours. Driven by her appetite, Suzu starts setting traps to catch Ayane. Knowing Ayane's jealousy and their constant conflicts, Suzu loudly insults Ayane, mentioning her flat chest, prompting Ayane to appear immediately to confront her. Suzu tries to capture Ayane with a sack, but Ayane calls on a bird friend to help her escape, taking Akuto along. As they flee, Suzu confronts Ayane, who proposes a new deal. If Suzu discovers Maki's weakness, Ayane will give her 10 more servings of the meal. Suzu enthusiastically agrees and rushes off on her new mission. Meanwhile, Ayane struggles to uncover her sister's weakness despite asking various people throughout the day. Suzu arrives with Maki, unseen by the other two. Frustrated by her inability to find Maki's weakness, Ayane remarks that Maki is already 18 and unmarried, labeling her as old, deeply affecting Maki. Despite thinking she's found Maki's weakness, Maki remains resilient against Ayane's attacks. On another day, while Suzu and Akuto are going about their usual tasks, Suzu slips and falls onto a statue. She panics because the statue contains an evil spirit that was sealed inside long ago, fearing it will curse her now. Akuto reassures her, attempting to adjust the statue but only making it worse before they leave, unaware that the statue's eyes have turned red. That night, Suzu becomes paranoid, jumping at every noise and shadow, unable to do anything without hiding behind Akuto. The next day, Akuto shares Suzu's fear with their friends, who initially mock her but eventually realize the extent of her terror. Ayane, however, continues to scare Suzu, but she stops when she realizes Suzu's sadness about her mother. When Ayane discovers the spirit, she tells tells Akuto. In the brief moment Akuto talks to Ayane, the spirit seizes Suzu. Surprisingly, the spirit isn't menacing but rather resembles the ghosts from Mario Brothers, albeit a bit lewd. Akuto strikes the spirit and explains that its manifestation is due to their lack of belief. He promises to spread rumors of its existence again, and the spirit happily departs, leaving the girls still scared. Episode 5. The bird girl seems to have control over many animals. This time, she gets angry when she sees that her bear has eaten all the grape jam they had managed to save recently. So, she has no choice but to go out and gather grapes. While Akuto and Suzu are fishing for their food of the day, Akuto wonders if he will really stay to live forever on that island and wonders if his family will miss him. Then, the bird girl falls upon him and all the animals that are always under her power gather around her, concerned for her well-being. After the bird girl wakes up, she and Suzu speak calmly with the animals, which surprises Akuto since to him they only make strange noises. Then the bird girl tells them that her bear is lost and she needs to find him. They decide to help her, and the bird girl divides the group into two. In one, she and Akuto will go, in the other, Suzu and all the animals. With that said, the bird girl hops onto Akuto's shoulders, accustomed to riding all her animals, and they begin the search for her bear. During the search, they encounter many bears, and Akuto keeps thinking each one is the girl's bear, but she explains the differences and why none of them is him. Although Akuto can't avoid getting a beating from an adult bear who feels offended by being mistaken for the girl's teenage bear. When they take a break to eat, the girl explains to Akuto that the bear was her first friend when all the girls started working, and she was left alone because she was small and had no one to play with. Furthermore, she assures him that although she may seem serious and mean, basically because she's a bear, her bear is actually very shy and most likely crying and scared somewhere. So Akuto decides to stop resting and continue on. Meanwhile, Suzu's group realizes along the way that there is a killer aura surrounding them, but then they discover that it's just Ayane trying to have a battle with Suzu as usual. Since they have no time to lose, one of the animals manages to finish off Ayane with one blow to continue their journey, and Suzu wishes someone would take care of her like the bird girl's animals take care of her. Throughout the day, Akuto continues his arduous search after having drawn the bear on a piece of wood, which for some reason earns him some blows from different animals. Finally, a squirrel indicates where it has seen the bear, and both head there. While the girl crosses a long bridge, it breaks loose. Akuto grabs the bridge's rope, but he's also taken by the weight, and both end up hanging from the bridge. Akuto wants to start climbing, but the other end of the bridge also gives way due to the weight, and they both believe they are going to lose their lives. However, at that moment, the bear appears and, taking the end of the ladder, saves their lives. At that moment, Suzu and the other animals appear, and Akuto realizes that he's starting to understand what each animal is saying. Episode 6. Still embarrassed by the fact that all the girls on the island are stronger than him, Akuto decides to practice kendo with the idea that he is a man and therefore should protect women, although it always ends up being the opposite. When he tells Suzu this, she is surprised as she had never met men before and doesn't quite understand that dynamic. While they are doing their daily tasks and carrying things here and there in the forest, a strong earthquake surprises them, and despite Suzu's great strength, she gets too scared because she still has instincts of a woman. That same night, when trying to take a bath, Suzu realizes that the bath is empty. In fact, all the baths have been emptied even though they come from hot springs. So the girls and Akuto gather at Suzu's house and divide the tasks of fetching water, chopping wood, and starting the fire. After a long while, they manage to have a large hot bath in a gigantic container, and they take turns bathing there, one by one. After so much work, everyone is exhausted, and the girls become sad because they don't know how they will manage from now on. Akuto suggests not bathing every day, but cleaning themselves with a damp towel, for which he earns a beating from the girls. Seeing how important it is for them, Akuto decides to go check the hot springs the next day. The girls do the same, and to their surprise, they all meet there. Then Akuto and Suzu go down the well to see what's going on, and upon seeing that it's blocked by earth, they start digging and bringing up the dirt through a pulley. However, while they are doing that, another earthquake occurs, and the floor they were standing on breaks, causing them to fall into a deep cave under the well. There they see water, but getting out becomes their priority. However, they must find another way out because the place they fell into has been blocked with rocks by the earthquake itself. With the fall, Suzu has twisted her ankle, so Akuto carries her on his back. Feeling a draft of air, Akuto realizes that following the current could lead them to the exit. After walking for a while, they finally find an exit, but it's too high, and Akuto carries Suzu on his back. Then Akuto figures out why the hot springs aren't working and starts breaking it, hoping that the water from the springs will push them up and lead them to the exit, killing two birds with one stone. Finally, he succeeds, and the water starts gushing out, but the current is so strong that it pulls Suzu down. Akuto manages to save her, and both are propelled upward, reaching the surface, which makes Akuto feel good as he finally could help a woman. Episode 7. Akuto and Suzu head to visit the Lord of the South, North, as he is Suzu's former jujitsu master. Akuto shudders knowing it's a lord, recalling the East Lord as the panda bear that attacked him, giving him a bad feeling about the journey. They finally meet the master, a pleasant but deadly little cat. The master explains that he called them for the survival game. Most of the population living in the South Forest consists of the cat tribe and the dog tribe, who compete annually for the title of lord. The master explains that the dog tribe has been gaining more and more power, so he hopes Suzu, but especially Akuto, will participate in the survival day on behalf of the cats. The battle involves drawing mustaches on enemies, knocking them out of the game, somewhat like paintball but with brushes and drawing mustaches. Suzu and Akuto manage to dodge and defeat many dogs, but as they are about to confront the leader of the dogs, Ayane and her sister appear to challenge them as they are on the side of the dogs. While they face off, the cat lord sets a decoy for those who draw the mustache, and everyone believes the dogs have won. The cat lord takes advantage of their lowered defenses to draw the mustache on the dog lord and finally win the competition, claiming the title of lord. Suzu and Akuto return happily home while the two sisters must prepare food for the dogs for participating and losing. Another day, the whole group decides to gather to see the only cherry blossom tree on the island, a milestone to witness it in full bloom. However, to reach it, they must cross through the extremely dangerous North Forest. Maki suggests splitting into 3 groups and orchestrates to have Akuto with her, which is not good because she always chooses the most dangerous paths. After a very dangerous journey, everyone has reached the meeting place only to find a giant scarred cat, the Lord of the North, in front of them. Just when they think it's over, the cat informs them that he's no longer the Lord of the North, as he passed his title 2 days ago to someone who defeated him, and then shows them the way. As our protagonists follow that path, they realize the bridge is broken because apparently in this world, the only ones who knew how to build bridges were men. Not willing to give up because they are eager to see the cherry blossoms, they set out to break a big tree and use it as a bridge. Finally, they arrive at their destination, and although Akuto is quite reluctant about it all, upon seeing the cherry blossom, he realizes that all the efforts have been worthwhile. Episode 8. Chikage has invited Suzu and Akuto to her home under the pretext of having a good time, when the real objective is to spend more time with Akuto in order to observe him. Therefore, before they arrive, she spends long hours studying about men and reading about them in books. When they arrive at Chikage's house, they are greeted by her maid, an elephant whom everyone considers the cutest on the island. While they have tea, Chikage appears dressed in very revealing attire, exposing her back, a large part of her chest, and wearing a very short skirt. As she appears like this, she looks directly at Akuto, awaiting his reaction, which is basically a river of blood. Then, one after another, she tries on different outfits to see how he reacts to each one, until she chooses a slave outfit. She then reveals her plan to observe their reactions, mentioning that she read about men's reactions in some slightly risque magazines. She tells them that those kinds of things always wash up on the beach, and then shows them a room where she keeps all the things the sea has brought. Chikage shows them one by one the things she has found, like a rice cooking machine and a microwave, while Akuto explains what each thing is. However, when they try to use them, they realize it's impossible because there is no electricity on the island. Chikage becomes greatly depressed because most of the objects there seem to run on electricity, rendering them useless. After this, Akuto and Suzu decide to leave, but as Chikage wants to continue her observation, she invites them to stay the night. For dinner, they follow a magazine with modern world recipes from Akuto, and one dish after another is a failure, so Akuto ends up hardly eating anything and remains hungry. When Akuto asks, Chikage explains that rice with curry is a traditional meal there and decides to cook it for him so he doesn't go hungry. Akuto tries it and is fascinated, while Suzu eats sweets because she hates curry. After dinner, Suzu suggests leaving again, and Chikage douses them in octopus ink, so they have no choice but to bathe there while she continues her observation. She is surprised to see Akuto's reaction, nosebleeds and fainting, when he sees them with little clothing, and then Suzu tells her that he always does that and that in their world boys and girls bathe separately. Next, it's Akuto's turn to bathe, and Chikage hides to observe him better, especially his naked body. While he bathes, he allows the maid to join him in the bath as she is an elephant and doesn't cause embarrassment. This surprises Chikage. While Akuto bathes, Chikage manages to observe part by part of his body, except the most important part, but that's enough for her to start feeling things for him. Finally, she cannot finish her investigation because she is crushed by the maid who jumps into the water and falls on her. That night, Suzu is angry with Akuto for bathing with the maid and not with her. Although he explains that he isn't embarrassed by the maid because she's an elephant, Suzu remains upset. Episode 9. In the forest, following Suzu's piglet, Akuto accidentally stumbles upon Rin, who is bathing in the river. Rin screams in embarrassment at being seen without clothes, and Akuto is thrilled that finally someone on that island is acting sensibly, as generally all the girls want to bathe with him. However, he gets a good beating, but minutes later, now dressed depressed. Rin apologizes for reacting that way and tells him that she is always bothered when people see her without clothes because all the girls stare at her in the baths and some even touch her because they are attracted to her. Later, Rin asks Akuto if he can accompany her to work the next day to help her, but they are interrupted by one of Rin's stalkers and Akuto fails to give her an answer. That night, Akuto tells Suzu his plan to help Rin at work and Suzu agrees to join the plan. Meanwhile, Rin's family tells her that they hope to have a successor soon, advising her to use all her feminine charms when she's with Akuto, which makes Rin very nervous. The next day, Akuto and Suzu show up at the place to help Rin build a house or something like that. While Rin teaches Akuto how to do it, Rin's younger sister, completely full of jealousy, approaches Suzu to explain that she is very concerned about the two of them. She tells Suzu that the day before, Akuto saw Rin while she was bathing in the river, which earned him a great beating and therefore a lump, and Suzu begins to put together pieces that she doesn't like at all. Upon learning that Akuto might be in love with Rin, she starts to feel terrible. At one point, while Rin teaches him how to hammer, she accidentally hits herself with the hammer and Akuto takes her hand to bandage it, which gives them a few seconds of intimacy that blushes both of them, and Rin's sister attacks them out of jealousy. Throughout the day, Rin makes many mistakes and Akuto helps her, which on the one hand makes Suzu sad, on the other hand makes Rin's sister jealous, and finally makes Rin feel bad because she thinks that if she continues to be so clumsy, Akuto will hate her. When Rin walks away to wash her face, her jealous sister and Akuto challenge each other to see who is better at building the house, and as both are willing not to lose, they work so hard that they end up building the house that same day. That night, while they eat dinner, Akuto praises the food Rin has cooked, and the mother takes the opportunity to say that if he marries Rin, he will be able to eat delicious food forever. After what happened that day, and with this phrase as the icing on the cake, he becomes enormously depressed. Episode 10. A heavy rain falls constantly on the island, and Suzu explains that when it rains like that, everyone takes the day off to avoid working in deplorable conditions, which she doesn't like so much because she's a hardworking person. Taking advantage of the rainy day that keeps them indoors, Akuto decides to cook for both of them, although the food ends up being a bit odd, but Suzu still eats it happily. However, Akuto gets bored after being indoors for so long because he has nothing to do. So Suzu suggests they play the board game Shipwrecked. While they play, Suzu comments that it's not normal for it to rain so much, although she remembers it happened the day Akuto arrived on the island and also the day she arrived on the island. Without much thought, Akuto comments that maybe the rainy days have something to do with the Gran, something unclear from the original text, and continues playing, but that idea sticks in Suzu's head and she looks at him sadly. Meanwhile, the rest of the girls are also bored at their homes, so they look for other things to do. With the rain, Chikage notices that her weather prevention machine isn't working and remembers that the frogs start behaving differently when it rains, so she decides to go out and investigate the frogs. The bird girl, after a pillow fight with her animals, decides that they will all go outside to play. Rin decides to go for a walk. Ayan and her sister argue and start chasing each other outside their house. So, since they have all gone out, they unknowingly find themselves in the middle of the forest. After beating her 20 times in a row, Suzu tells Akuto that there was a person who played with her on rainy days, her mother. Throughout the day, she has shown several signs that she feels lonely, which worries Akuto because he knows she must miss her mother. Then all the girls arrive at the house, saying that they accidentally met and decided to visit her, and each of them has brought a different gift: a giant peach, a fish, a shiggy piece, a flower, and they all give them to Suzu. Akuto then notices that the girls didn't meet by accident, but came there with the intention of making sure their friend doesn't feel lonely on a rainy day. Later, Suzu tells him that she knows they do it so she won't be alone, but she confesses that since Akuto has been with her, she no longer feels lonely. Episode 11. Akuto wakes up from a dream in which he bathes with Suzu to realize that sleepwalking Suzu has fallen asleep in a giant hot water jar. Despite quickly getting her out, her fever starts to rise, so he must call the elderly doctor. The old woman tells him that it's clearly because she slept in a jar all night and sends Akuto to fetch ice. Akuto asks where he can get ice in a place without electricity, and the old woman sends him to a cave that keeps cold very well. However, upon arrival, there's no more ice, and as he encounters the bird girl there, she decides to take him to the mountain, which is the other place they can find ice. Although it's a very high mountain and it will be difficult to get there. Both the bird girl, her mother, and all the animals decide to accompany him, so they set off on their journey. Meanwhile, Maki forces Ayan, using her voodoo doll, to go for ice so she can have an ice cup, thus heading towards the mountain. After a long while, Akuto's group reaches the mountain, and while he remains determined to carry a large amount of ice in his cart to cure Suzu, both the bird girl's mother and all the animals take advantage of their time there to play snowball fights, build igloos, and make snowmen. All the time they were doing that, Akuto worked hard to fill the cart with ice. When he's about to leave, everyone warns him that the snowstorm at that moment is very dangerous and he should wait, but Akuto is determined to bring the ice to Suzu. He barely begins to advance and loses strength due to the cold, but he remembers that Suzu is worse off and hurries, although he hurries so much that he ends up falling without the cart in a dangerous fall, though he is unharmed by the snow. As he starts to climb to reach the cart again, an avalanche that carries all the other characters also drags Akuto, who is glad because he has arrived much faster because of it. Then he puts a large amount of ice in a bag he has made with white fabric and starts running towards the house, hoping the ice won't melt on the way. At the request of the bird mother, the giant bird quickly takes him home, and upon arrival, only a handful of ice remains. However, in his absence, Suzu has recovered because it was only a common cold. After rejoicing in his friend's well-being, Akuto faints from exhaustion and the temperature changed due to everything done throughout the day. Episode 12. Ain and Maki take turns making breakfast, with the small detail that Maki never fulfills her turn and Ain ends up making breakfast and cleaning the dishes every day. One day, knowing her weak point, Ain tells Maki that for that reason she is 18 years old and has never been married because she doesn't know how to do any household chores and so she will never find a husband. Of course, it has nothing to do with the fact that there are no men on the island. Anyway, with these arguments, Ain manages to convince her older sister to train to learn how to do household chores. She then goes to Chikage's house, who tells her that only by following the recipe book to the letter can she do anything. However, she proves in a few minutes that she hasn't cooked too many times and the kitchen becomes a mess, so Maki decides to flee. Then she goes to Rin's house to ask her to take her as a teacher. At the end of the day, Maki appears at her house and gives Ain a package saying that she has learned to do that. When Ain opens the box, she realizes that it is empty and Maki tells her that she has learned to make the box with Rin's teachings. The next day, she asks Rin again to teach her, but now to teach her cooking. Meanwhile, Ain, Suzu, and Akuto talk about what it's like to cook in Akuto's world, and he tells them that lately not everyone cooks anymore, but many people just buy things already made at the market. Suzu assures that cooking is making those she loves happy and assures that since she has been with Akuto, cooking is much more enjoyable for her. Then a war ensues between Ain and Suzu to see who cooks that night for Akuto, but then they receive a note from Maki inviting them to try her new dishes that same night. As they are arriving at the place, a completely battered Rin appears before them, warning them not to eat anything Maki prepares because they will end up badly, but before they can escape, Maki uses dark magic to bring them inside. Then she starts cooking and tells them not to enter the kitchen. From the dining room, they hear such terrible sounds in the kitchen that they start to think the worst. At the end of the cooking, Maki leaves a large number of different dishes in front of the guests, all with a horrific appearance. No one dares to try it, but after a while, Akuto takes a bite, praying that it is not poisoned, so he is surprised when the taste is delicious. Guided more by her words than by the appearance of the food, the girls eat, coming to the same conclusion. Despite its ugly appearance, the food is exquisite. Maki is happy and tells them that she has prepared a lot and will not let them go until they finish everything, so our characters gain about 50 kilos just to finish eating that and be able to escape. The next day, everyone is sick from eating too much. There is still a lot of story to tell, but this is all the time we have for today. If you like this summary and want to know the end of the story, comment Castaway and we will soon return to this curious world. See you later.